The public and the world were misled. That's the conclusion of an exhaustive 5-year investigation by a U.S. Senate committee detailing the CIA's aggressive questioning of terror suspects in the period following the September 11th attacks. Among the startling revelations, the CIA used waterboarding, confinement in small spaces, shackling in stress positions, rectal rehydration, and other painful procedures that were never approved, all while minimizing the severity of the interrogations and exaggerating the usefulness of the information produced. The reaction has been fast and furious on all sides, including this late today from current CIA Director John Brennan.
The CIA was unprepared to conduct a detention and interrogation program, and our officers inadequately developed and monitored its initial activities. The agency failed to establish quickly the operational guidelines needed to govern the entire effort. In a limited number of cases, agency officers used interrogation techniques that had not been authorized, were abhorrent, and rightly should be repudiated by all. And we fell short when it came to holding some officers accountable for their mistakes.
And joining me now is CCTV's White House correspondent, Jessica Stone. Jessica, we just listened to CIA Director John Brennan giving some pretty strong reaction to the CIA torture report. What were some of the most controversial elements disclosed in that report released earlier this week?
Well, it concludes that these techniques simply didn't work, that they did not result in the critical information, for example, that led to the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden. So the report concludes that the techniques were ineffective and that the CIA's, quote, justification of them was based on inaccurate claims. It reveals that CIA detainees were subjected to much harsher conditions than revealed to the U.S. government, and that the CIA actively avoided oversight from the White House and Congress and even failed to evaluate its own program's effectiveness. Of course, earlier, CIA Director John Brennan disputed that the CIA hid anything from Congress or the White House as it proceeded with these tactics, though he did admit that the agency failed to provide operational guidelines needed to guide this effort, which resulted in what he called an abhorrent one.
There has been a lot of debate in the United States about whether or not this report should have been made public. What have been some of the strongest arguments for and against releasing the report?
Well, those who support the release say it's an important step in helping the U.S. regain its, quote, moral authority, which the White House admits it has lost by virtue of these torture practices. It shows the transparency, they say, and an effort to right the wrongs of the past. But detractors say it will demotivate CIA agents and also make them less safe to work and travel abroad. Many were concerned that they would be unsafe to travel and that the release would spark global and violent protests, which, of course, we have yet to see.
And how has the international community responded to these report revelations?
Well, of course, countries who have come under withering criticism for their human rights records pointed out the hypocrisy at play here. We heard from Russia, Iran, China, the Chinese in particular pointing out that they do not support torture and hope that the U.S. will learn from its mistakes. But the harshest criticism here coming from the Afghan president who decried the torture of his citizens in Afghanistan who were then in U.S. custody. Let's take a listen.
All accepted norms of human rights in the world and American law have been violated by a number of CIA agents and their contractors.
We also heard from the former Polish president who for the first time admitted he allowed the secret CIA interrogations to take place in his country. He said the U.S. now risks losing Allied support for future secret operations.
Because in a new situation, every country will be wondering to what extent it can be trusted that some operations, sometimes on the verge of illegality but crucial for security, will be possible to implement.
Now, one surprise that I alluded to earlier here was that despite increased concern and even security at U.S. embassies around the world, there have been no violent protests connected to the release of this report. Anand?
Jessica Stone, thanks for joining us.